supporting you in your dog parenting journey. The Dynamic Dog Owner with Debbie Potter.
Hello and welcome to the Dynamic Dog Owner, the podcast designed to support you, the dog parent, in your dog parenting journey. So today we are joined by Carolina from Chewing with River, who is a canine nutritionist, who is here to share loads of information about what we should feed our dogs and how food helps. So welcome, Carolina.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
A pleasure. So obviously most people may not have seen you, heard of you, know who you are. So do you want to just give us a little overview of who you are, your background, and how you got into canine nutrition?
Yeah, sure. So I'm going to say this straight off the bat because it's the thing that people always wonder, where's the accent from? I'm Portuguese. So now you don't have to wonder for the rest of the episode. So yeah, I'm Portuguese, born and raised. I moved across to the UK when I was 16. And I went to uni to study. So career was spent really working within the mental health sector. But then as a volunteering opportunity, I started assisting in local puppy classes. So I really enjoyed it. I really got into it. And then the trainer at the time that was running the classes asked me if I fancied actually becoming a trainer. So I started training to become a trainer, and that kind of led to me looking for my own dog because I didn't have one at the time. And of course, as any ADHD girly will do, I hyper-focused on everything my own dog. So yeah, year, and I spent those 12 months absolutely non-stop researching the best training, the best food, the best harnesses and treats and toys and everything. And really food was the thing that, I don't know, it just interested me so. I just found there was such polar opinions on food. And I'm a Gemini, so I love the devil's advocate situation, right? So for me, those polar opposite opinions were super interesting because I just wanted to know it was right. It was right. Is it the raw feeders? Is it the kibble feeders? Is it everyone in between? And really, yeah, that's what sparked my interest in nutrition. So then I started taking courses, I started reading books, research papers, and then eventually when I felt like my knowledge was good enough, and I'd been working with more dogs, obviously on the training side of things as well, I then started working and supporting people with their dog's diet. So started really with simple things like diet transitions, and now that I've built up about 5 years of experience, I'm allergic dogs, your itchy dogs, etc., etc. But yeah, it all started from my little golden retriever River, which is the one you can see on my top. um, and yeah, it just a hyperfixation that turned into a business that turned into my whole life.
I get that. Yeah. I think my business is the same. You get very hyperfixated on what you're doing, but it's good. Fantastic.
Yeah.
So I like these happy accidents when they happen. Because,
The hyperfixation has lasted, so
well, that's good. But yeah, it's nice how it just kind of happens and you kind of get down this path and then, yeah, it becomes a job and then you enjoy it still, which is always good. So obviously we're going to ask you some questions about nutrition. I've had other people submit a couple of questions that we can get answered. And yeah, we'll find out a few bits and pieces about nutrition. So obviously this isn't going to be like this is what you should feed your dog, because I'm sure it's much more in depth than that. But we've got a few questions to ask you and we'll see where the conversation flows. So generally, as a nutritionist, what does your day look like?
So my day is super varied because obviously I worked across the training and then the food side of things. So I might start the day with a training session. I might then come home and do a nutrition report. All through the day, I have clients contacting me. I get a lot of poop pictures from my nutrition clients, which is always fun. And then just, I do a lot of networking. So I love going to networking events. So I do that a lot. I love learning. So I try to make a mindful effort to schedule time in for courses, webinars, reading, whatever it might be. I really think that the moment that as a dog professional we stop learning or we think we know it all is the moment when we become quite dangerous, actually. So I think for me it's really important that I'm always learning. And the networking helps with that as well, because I don't necessarily always network with dog professionals, but I network with people from loads of different businesses, and sometimes just hearing what they think about dogs, the issues that they're having with their dogs from a non-professional is really helpful. I think sometimes if you're just talking to dog people all the time, you get a bit of a warped view of what's going on. So I really like that variety. And it just keeps things interesting. It keeps things challenging as well. Um, and yeah, so yeah, every day's different. A good mix between training and nutrition and random stuff.
Excellent. So presumably you work virtually then rather than in person with your clients.
Yes, so nutrition consults and the whole process is remote. So the kind of should I talk you through like what the client journey looks like to give you a bit of an idea? Yeah.
No.
So normally the first point of contact that I have with a nutrition client is a free discovery call. So it's about 10-15 minute call where people will tell me what issue they're having with their dogs, and I assess if it's something that I can help them with or not, if my service is what they need, or if it's something else that I can maybe refer them on to. So if my assessment is that I can help and I'm what they need, then we go ahead and we send out a questionnaire. So it's a really thorough questionnaire that goes through everything the dog is eating, the water they're drinking, the bowls that they eat and drink from, the cleaning products used around the house. It's really thorough. It's very much trying to look at the dog's life on a very 360 view. Once I get that report back, that questionnaire back, I then write a report with my findings. So my report is analyzing every area that I just mentioned, and then giving the owner some information about things that they could improve, things that are maybe harmful to their dog at the moment. And it's all information based. So my priority is I never want a client of mine to feel like I'm dictating what they have to do, because I'm so mindful that nutrition is such a personal choice, particularly when we're thinking about things like on the wider well-being scale, like vaccines, flea and tick treatments. So I just want people to have access to as much as information as they need to make an informed choice. So once they have that report, they have a bit of time to look through it, and then we meet online. And in that meeting is where we go through everything that I put together, and we kind of gauge what the client feels comfortable doing or not doing. So I might have clients that actually don't want to vaccinate, but they don't know what else to do. I have clients that definitely want to continue vaccinating. I have clients that are very happy with raw feeding, others that do not want to raw feed. So that first meeting is a good opportunity to kind of see where people are at and what they feel comfortable with. And we create an action plan together. So the action plan we create is the improvements we're going to make to the dog's life, routine, nutrition, and then for the next 2 months, I'm basically in your pocket at all times, supporting the person to implement those changes, answering any questions, looking at those poo pictures that I mentioned before. And then at the end of the 2 months, we have a review call where, again, we can kind of look at how things are working, what we need to be doing next. And then at that point, my clients can choose to go onto my monthly plan, which is basically just a maintenance plan where if you still want a bit of that hand holding, if you feel like there's still things you're a bit unsure of, or you just need, I think, to be honest, a lot of my clients, they know exactly what they're doing, but they just like having me there just in case.
Yeah, fair.
Which is so nice actually, because I always try to not create dependency across both services, training or nutrition. But I think there's something so lovely about the fact that you're able to create that level of trust where people want your opinion and
Yeah.
they feel safer when they have that opinion. So that's kind of what the client journey looks like for nutrition. And then training, I do work in person, so it's a bit different.
So what are the reasons people will enlist your service? Why do they come to you in the first place? Is it because someone's been sort of vets recommended it, or is it because they're seeing things with their dog that they want to change?
I wish that it was vets recommending, but
That would be the ideal world, wouldn't it?
yeah, unfortunately, we're not quite at that stage, which is understandable because I think what people don't realize is that canine nutrition is not a protected profession, right? And so there's no set path to become a nutrition consultant. It's not a protected term to be a nutritionist, although actually I don't really like using the term nutritionist. I prefer nutrition consultant. So because there isn't that set qualification, there isn't that protection of the profession, I understand why vets would be very reluctant to refer to somebody because there's no way that they can really fact check you, you know? So yeah, so I think so far I've not had any referrals from vets. My referrals tend to come more so from dog trainers, behaviorists, also like doggy daycares, kennels, and just friends. I get a lot of referrals, friends of friends, someone that sees my Instagram, knows their friend's dog is struggling, and then they say, oh, go check Carolina out, kind of thing. So that's really how people come to me. The reason why they come to me, probably the most common will be allergies. So when they're true like environmental allergies or food intolerances, and anyone that follows me knows that I don't talk about food allergies because they're really rare. People say, oh, my dog's allergic to chicken. True food allergies are really rare, but intolerances are much more common. So yeah, food intolerances, environmental allergies, anal gland problems, weight management. I would say those are probably kind of the bulk of my casework.
Okay. So if somebody was like looking at their dog and going, do I need to see a nutrition consultant or not? What kind of things would you say are the flags to say, yes, you probably need to look at your nutrition?
So maybe this is someone that has been back and forth to the vets a lot. Maybe their dog has been really itchy and they're maybe on anti-itch injections. Maybe they've been on steroids. Maybe the vets have suggested prescription diets. Dogs that are constantly going to the vets for anal gland expressions. If you notice that your dog is having quite loose stools on a regular basis, I think I talk about poo a lot. And I'm not going to make this podcast about poo, but I don't think the kind of regular dog owner realizes what a healthy poop looks like.
Very true. Yeah.
And I think a lot of people accept an unhealthy poop as normal. And in the long term, that can be really damaging because the poop health will tell us a lot about the dog's health.
Yep.
So yeah, if your dog's stools are constantly loose, if they're very bulky and very stinky, those could all be signs of an unhealthy gut. If your dog has been on the same food their whole life, I would also recommend speaking to somebody because really a dog should not just be on the same stuff forever. I have had a lot of clients that have been on the same, I don't know, whatever brand of chicken, and that's all they've eaten for years on end. That's not particularly healthy. And I think there's as well, especially more recently, the dog owner that comes to me because they're having issues. So they're not really seeing any signs of ill health in their dog. But what they do want to do is make sure that that dog has got the best possible chance to live a long, happy, healthy life. So a lot of people that are thinking more in preventative terms now, which I think is really cool. So it's maybe a healthy dog, but it's a dog where the owner is thinking, okay, how do I make sure the joints stay healthy, the gut stays healthy, the skin stays healthy, the brain stays healthy? How can I make this dog into like a forever dog kind of thing?
Okay. And is that because their nutritional needs change as they grow and as they age? or just because diet, like brand change as well, or is it a combination?
Yeah, it's definitely a combination. So a dog's needs are definitely changing with age. So with our young puppies, we want to focus on building a really strong immune system. 70% of the immune system is in the gut. So if we feed that puppy a healthy, nutritious diet, they're going to have the best chance of developing a really good immune system. And with a really good immune system, they're going to be able to fight off parasites. They're going to be able to fight off illness. And they're just going to be they're going to be a sound, healthy dog, right? Then if we look at things like our adolescent dogs that are maybe struggling with those hormonal changes, maybe behaviorally, there's some issues starting to develop like reactivity, frustration behaviors, etc. Food can have a huge impact on those as well.
Okay.
You have a huge link between the brain and the gut. So the gut-brain axis, the gut is responsible for producing the majority of serotonin in the dog. And so if the gut is unhealthy, the brain follows, and vice versa. So particularly when we get to that stage of adolescence and beyond, where dogs are starting to develop those behavioral problems, it's really important to support the gut and to have a really good diet in place. So you have the best chance of your dog being able to learn and be able to engage with that behavioral rehabilitation.
Yeah.
And then obviously older dogs, we're thinking about maybe, cancer prevention, preventing or supporting joint issues, arthritis, etc., etc. And then cognition is one that is normally left out. So actually supporting the dog's cognition is really important because as they get older, they will lose some of that functioning. So if we're preventative from the early years, we're going to give that brain a really good chance. But if we're maybe starting at a later date, is what can we do at that stage to support that cognition? And then that's a mix of, again, the training side of things, your stuff like your problem solving, your enrichment, all that good stuff. But then also supporting that with food, possibly with supplements, etc.
So that's amazing. That's interesting. And I say a lot of people, we wait until people in general, we wait until we've got a problem, then we try and fix it, don't we? We don't often be preventative. And I think it's probably, I'm sure you see it quite a lot, that people get given the food that the puppy comes with the breeder, and they just go, well, this is the food the breeder recommended, therefore it must be the best one. Off I go. So is there, like, if you were to, and it's a very difficult question to ask you, but is there a better food in terms of like you've got your raw, your cooked kibbles, dry, cold pressed? Is there one that generally is better, or is it really dependent on the individual dog?
If we're talking about a healthy dog, I would say that the gold standard would be either a homemade cooked, but properly made. And that's very important because unfortunately, a lot of the recipes that you can find online are not safe to feed in the long term. So that's very important. So if we're doing homemade cook, we need to make sure that we're working with someone that formulates proper recipes, right? Before anyone comes and asks, I don't do that side of things. So don't come and ask me. I do not do recipe formulation. So yeah, that, and I would say that is then on par with your raw feeding, which again needs to be done properly. Not every raw food is created equally. And just because it's raw, it doesn't make it better.
Yeah.
Because you could have a raw food that to a certain extent, that it could be so poorly formulated that to a certain extent, you might as well be feeding kibble.
Yeah.
So all that I'm saying is with the caveat of those foods need to be properly formulated. They have to have the right ingredients with them. If we're talking about a poorly dog, and this is something that I get a lot, is people will come to me with a poorly dog and they say, oh, I've swapped to raw because I've been told it's better because my dog is itchy or gets diarrhea or whatever it might be. That might actually not be the right option at that stage. So any diet change when a dog is already ill or experiencing symptoms of ill health, that diet change needs to be considered very carefully. It needs to be done slowly. It needs to be done with the appropriate gut support. So So yeah, making sure that you aren't just changing your dog's food willy-nilly and you're doing it properly is very, very, very important. And in those cases, it might be that commercially available, gently cooked food
Okay.
could be the best option to start off with. Even if the goal is to move on to raw eventually, it might be that you start off with cooked food. It might be actually that you have to remain on the current diet until you do a little bit more of gut support so the dog can handle the change of diet. So yeah, it's very individual from dog to dog, I would say. But generally speaking, with healthy dogs, I'd go to the cooked or raw.
Okay. And how about like a lot of people will say, the vet said I need to go on this food and they have the specialized diet, the different ones they've got. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but all the specialists, my dog on this diet or this diet. Are they useful or are they just a thing that are put out there as a marketing gimmick for companies? Because there's a lot of controversy about that. What's your opinion?
Yeah, absolutely. There is a lot of controversy for a good reason. One of the reasons being that these prescription diets are overused a lot. So there's a lot of dogs that don't need that prescription diet that end up on it and end up on it for a very prolonged period of time. So the question that I'd be asking if I had a dog, went to the vet and the vets told me you need to go on this prescription is how long for? What's the plan to get my dog healthy again? And what foods will we be feeding after? Because prescription diets shouldn't really be for long-term use. There are absolutely cases where the dog might need it. They have their place. Even as someone that doesn't necessarily suggest kibble, the prescription diets do have their place, but it needs to be part of an overall long-term plan to get the dog healthy again. If the
Okay.
only plan is change to this bag, feed it forever, that is not a good plan. That is not good enough. And so I think we need to start being a little bit more careful with the use of those diets. And then of course there's the gimmicks of like the Dachshund food, the Golden Retriever food, that
Yeah.
stuff. That is gimmicky. That is absolutely like marketing. There's not really. Yes, some breeds might be more predisposed to certain conditions because of really bad breeding practice, which we'll not go into because I could be here all day. So yes, certain breeds might be more predisposed to certain issues, but unless your dog already has those issues, you don't need to treat them.
Yes, that makes perfect sense. Yeah.
So if your Golden Retriever food is Golden Retriever food because it's to support joints, there's lots of ways you can support joint health that are much more efficient and cheaper than a specific breed kibble.
Yeah, that makes perfect
Yeah,
sense.
those are like kind of the main sides of those sort of vet foods, if you will.
So it's quite a minefield, really, isn't it? If you think about it from a brand new dog owner perspective, how do you pick? Are there certain things that people should be looking out for, or are there like green flags, red flags in terms of not necessarily brands, but things people should look for when they're picking? Because we've all heard of the All About Dog Food website. Is that actually worthwhile?
Yeah, so it is a minefield. It's so much of a minefield that I ended up making a career of it. So I'm the worst person to ask. Because I'll tell you, if you really want to know, go and spend thousands of pounds and 1 million hours researching it all. No, I think for your regular dog owner, what I'd be thinking about is first and foremost having a really good understanding of the breed that you have. So regardless of age, again, you're going to know certain breeds are going to be more predisposed to certain issues. So there might be certain things you want to prioritize in prevention and or treatment, depending on the dog's age and current health status. So have a really good understanding of the breed. Have a really good understanding as well of what the dog's routine is going to be like. So if you have a working dog, you're going to have to adapt their diet to that level of exercise, of calorie consumption, etc. If you have a dog that is a couch potato, again, That's gonna be a whole different conversation too. So I'd start with that. I would also start thinking about your budget because
Mhm.
as much everyone would love to feed the best possible food, the reality is that budget has to play a part because you can't get yourself bankrupt trying to feed your dog, right? It's got to be realistic
Yeah.
for what you can afford. And also thinking about more practical stuff like storage. A lot of clients that I've had simply don't have the storage for raw feeding. They don't
Mm.
have a freezer that is big enough. They don't have anywhere else they could put a spare freezer, for example. And I'm not saying that you need those things because there's loads of services now they deliver every week, whatever. So it's definitely still doable, but it's how much you're willing to faff around with it, I guess,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Certain people just want something that they can easily pick up from the store or they can order on Amazon. They might have more stringent budgets that have to apply, so that's really important to think about as well.
Mm.
And then yeah, once you've kind of established those things, you'll have a good idea of what's realistic to look into. So
Mm.
if your budget is very limited, there's no point looking at gently cooked because gently cooked is very expensive.
Of course. Yeah.
You know, it is what it is. It's expensive for a reason because it's good quality, like, but if you're not going to be able to afford it, there's no point looking into it. You know,
Yeah. Yeah. No,
um,
absolutely.
if you have a budget that is maybe a little bit larger, then maybe you can look at the raw. So if you're looking at raw feeding, you have so many different options. I
Mm.
say to people as a beginner raw feeder, just start with simple. Start with an 80-10-10 or start with a good quality complete. So the completes is normally the ones that will include fruit and veg.
Yeah.
80-10-10 is just meat, bone, and organ meat. Okay. So start simple. Don't overcomplicate it because people complicate it a lot and it puts them off raw feeding for life. Also, don't start with budget brands. If you're going to start with a really, really cheap stuff, your dog's probably going to get a bit ill. And then you're going to go, it's not for us. It didn't
Yeah.
work. When
That
actually, raw feeding could have worked brilliantly for you. It's just because you were using a poor quality raw
Mm.
food. So look for brands that are very transparent about the ingredients that they use. So you can clearly read on their website or on the packaging exactly what's in that food. Ideally, you also want to look for people that are on their social media talking about their food, showing their factories maybe, talking about the lab testing that they have done on their food, all that sort of stuff. So the brands that are not just churning out little chubs that are like £1 per chub, but the brands that are truly investing in the quality of the meats that go into the recipes, the testing that is done for pathogens, etc. And that in itself can be a minefield, to be honest, because some brands that look amazing are
Good
sometimes not
marketing. Yeah.
that amazing. You know?
And I did it myself. I went to a budget. I'm a raw feeder, and I went to a budget brand, and wow, the poo was amazing. The difference. I didn't stay. I was like, okay, we're going to our expensive brand because, as you say, if it's a budget product, it's generally not as good.
Yeah. Generally speaking, if you just go off the packaging, generally speaking, anything that comes in those tubs that it's got like a flimsy plastic roll is a lower quality food. It's a lower quality product. Not all, but most. I still use them, but I am an experienced raw feeder. I know how to balance these things. What tends to happen with the budget brands is that the bone content tends to be higher than is stated. So normally you want your bone content at about 10%. Some of these brands can be 15, 20, right? So most dogs, that will be too much and it will cause constipation. And then the texture of the mince as well, if you can see big chunks of bone, that's not going to be great. So you've got to be mindful of it. But having said that, I still use them. I still use budget brands. I just have to be careful in knowing what I need to do to then keep River still at a healthy level. So
Yeah.
I might have to use some boneless minces as a mix.
Mm.
River is also an allergic dog. She has environmental allergies. And if she has a lot of fruit and veg or carbs generally, she can flare up. So I have to be very careful to keep those things as a minimum. So, for example, I can't use the complete minces
Sure.
because if I was to use them, she'd flare up. She'd get itchy. She'd have an yeast flare up. It's not what I want.
Well, I
So
know.
again, you've got to think about all these individual things, and yes, it's a little bit trickier than just picking a bag of kibble off the supermarket shelf. Yes, I appreciate that. I appreciate a lot of people will just say, "Oh, it's only a bloody dog. My dog 20 years ago ate the scraps of our
Yeah.
plates. It's fine." I'm sure they were, but we also need to recognize that today we have a huge amount of issues that are genetically bred into our dogs.
Yeah.
Breeding did not exist 20 years ago like it exists now.
No, exactly.
We didn't have the crazy mixes that are being made. We didn't have people breeding for money like they do now.
Yeah.
And that alone can cause so many issues that we have to be aware. So yeah, maybe your dog 20 years ago lived very healthily in a very long life, but they also weren't exposed to the same level of pollution.
Exactly. Yeah. Lots of changes.
To the same level of chemicals that we put into our house, the stuff that our furniture is sprayed with, there's the flora you're using to clean the floor.
Yeah.
You didn't have all that either. So our dogs in today's age are just exposed to a load of crap that we're constantly trying to fight against. And so you have to go the extra mile. You have to put a little bit more thought and research into it. Because otherwise, your dog's going to die at 10, 12, and you're going to think, oh, 10 years old, what a lovely, long life. And I sit back and I say, 10 years old? You think that's old? Like, my dog is turning 5 in January. I am not prepared to think that that's how
Yeah.
her life will live. No, I do not want to accept that. And that is something that I'm so passionate about because I feel like we've set the standard so bloody low.
Yeah.
in
Very
terms
true.
of- Yeah, in terms of the health, the quality of our pet's life and the longevity of our pet's life, we need to start raising that bar again. Like I'll talk about this until the cows come home because we need to stop settling for a short, uncomfortable, painful life for our
Yeah.
dogs. It's not
No,
bad.
definitely. And that kind of brings us on to the topic of like supplements. Is it standard that most dogs should need supplements? Or if you've got a good diet, do you not need supplements?
If you have a healthy diet and a healthy dog, you shouldn't really need supplements.
Okay.
However, supplements definitely have their place.
Sure.
So for example, for River, I've mentioned with the allergies and stuff. So there's certain supplements that we feed River that I might not feed to a different golden retriever. So again, it's a very individual plan. So River's had some issues with muscle wastage around her hips. So she's on a joint supplement. She can't have a lot of carbs because of her allergies. So she's on another supplement just to give her some of those extra nutrients that she's missing out from not being able to have some of that fruits and veg content. So again, you've got to look at your dog and think, what is it that they need? I think as a base, a dental supplement is probably the only one that I'd recommend every dog is on. Because even with a healthy diet, if you're not providing, for example, raw bones to help shift some of that plaque, that is still going to build up. So probably a dental is the only one I would say probably every dog should have something for dental.
And considering dental, what's the word? Like infections or disease, that's the one. Dental disease is on the rise quite a lot. That's probably a good thing to add in to most dogs' diet. So it makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I'd have to double check my statistics, but I think something like 80% of dogs, 2 or 3, will have some level of periodontal disease.
Which is
That's
scary,
crazy.
really. Yeah,
Because
it
that's
is.
a
It
very
really,
young
really-
dog, and again, that's gut related because if the gut is poorly, you have the plaque building, you have an environment, a microbiome in that mouth that is going to make that bacteria thrive. And the longer that plaque stays on, it's going to turn into tartar. It's going to be
Yep.
much harder to shift. And then instead of a 15, 20 pound supplement that could have prevented all this, you're talking about a dental at the vets that is going to cost you in the hundreds.
Exactly.
You
Yeah.
know, so yeah, I think dental support is very much
Okay.
neglected and needs to be more prioritized. And that's probably the only supplement I would say would be worth it. But I will also say about supplements, there's supplements and there's supplements, you know? The supplement market is gigantic.
Yes, there are
And
so many out there. Again, it's a
And
minefield. Which one do you pick?
yeah. And unfortunately, really poor quality supplements as well. So you've gotta look carefully into the stuff that you're using. Because again, I've seen loads of people say, oh, I've used this dental supplement and it's crap. It doesn't work at all. So I'm not going to use anything else ever again. Well,
Yeah.
maybe that one was crap.
But the
But
others are probably really good.
absolutely. And there's a couple of things that I'd always recommend you have in the cupboard that are supplements, but you might not need every day. So pumpkin powder, slippery elm, and marshmallow root. I love those. I think those are really good to have in the cupboard for as and when.
Yeah.
So if your dog is a little bit constipated, if your dog's got diarrhea, those two are really good to kind of help the dog recover. If your dog, maybe with the hot weather, is been more dehydrated, bone broth is great to have in the cupboard, particularly for those warmer days to help your dog stay hydrated, especially if you have a dog that doesn't really drink a lot of
Yeah.
water. If you're feeding kibble, I'd always recommend as a minimum you add water to the bowl, because kibble is really dehydrating for the dog. So if you add a bit of water to the bowl, at least you're boosting that hydration a little bit more. Ideally bone broth, but obviously that's also more expensive. So if you're on a budget, at least some water, you know.
Yeah.
So that's kind of it really in terms of the supplements that I recommend. And then of course if the dog has specific needs, then you can look at that. You can look at your green lip mussels, your I don't know, glucosamines, your whatever, your mushrooms. I love mushroom supplements. All that sort of stuff for if the dog needs it.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's interesting that you mentioned mushrooms. Most people obviously would avoid feeding mushrooms because it's publicized that they are an allergy, poisonous to dogs. So mushrooms, the right mushrooms?
Yeah, the right mushrooms for sure. So generally speaking, any mushroom that is safe for human consumption is safe for dog consumption, generally speaking. But we're talking about medicinal mushrooms, not just, chuck a couple of chestnuts in there, So
Yeah.
we're talking about our lion's mane, our cordyceps, your reishi, that sort of stuff. So that's the stuff that is going to have medicinal influence in the dog's body. So we're talking about supporting with things like cognition, immune system, etc. But yeah, you can also just add a couple of chestnuts for your dog's bowl. Like,
Yeah.
you probably won't do much, but it's a bit different.
It's something different. I know, I just think people go, oh my God, I thought mushrooms were poisonous. And obviously, I'm aware they're not. So I thought it'd be a good question to ask you. So we'll end up, I could talk to you for hours about this because it is such a interesting topic. We might have to do a second round. But to keep people interested, we don't like to go on too long, obviously, in one sitting. A couple of questions I've had asked, and hopefully I have a quick answer for you, is, should I feed once or twice a day?
Completely up to you and up to your dog. Some dogs thrive on once a day. Some dogs prefer twice a day.
Okay. Should you listen to the advice on the packet in terms of volume, how much you should be feeding, the portion sizes? Is it correct, or is it, again, dependent on the individual?
This one is really tricky because it depends on the brand. Some brands don't have very good feeding amounts, so they can be really tricky to figure out how much to feed. Generally speaking, 2 to 3% of the dog's body weight for fresh feeding. What I would say is, if you're worried about quantities, check your dog's body condition, not just their weight, because every dog of the same breed could have completely different weights and still be healthy. So check your dog's body condition. If your dog is looking nice and trim, you have that nice stuck in front of the back legs, you can see a tuck in the abdomen after the ribs from above. That's what dogs should look like. If they start gaining weight, cut down the food a bit. If they're losing too much, up it a little bit. You just have to stay in tune with your dog because, there's so many factors that will go into it in terms of quantity because it's exercise levels, it's the type of exercise, the type of food, etc. So just keep a good eye on your dog's body condition and you can't go too wrong.
Fabulous. And one final question. Why does my dog eat cat poo? Is what somebody's asked me.
Oh, God. So poo eating can be a variety of things. So some dogs will eat poop because they maybe have an imbalanced gut. So there's maybe certain nutrients or minerals that they're looking for. Sometimes they just like it and it's just habit. What tends to happen a lot is, oh, my dog keeps eating cat poop. So every time they go towards the cat poop, I start shouting and screaming and pulling back on the lead. So I make it very exciting for the dog to go towards that food. And that becomes a habit. So it becomes something that's fun to do because they're seeing you get all animated when they try to stop you. With other cases, it could be more gut related, maybe some bacteria that isn't quite right in the gut. Again, speak to somebody like myself who's going to be able to help you dig a little bit deeper because poo eating alone is not giving you the full picture.
Yeah, a lot more to it. So if there was one piece of advice you could give every listener, what would it be?
Oh, God, that's a hard question.
Which one do you pick?
One piece of advice. Oh, God, this is so hard. I'm going to go with a simple one of weight management.
Okay.
Make sure your dog stays a healthy weight and body condition because that can dictate so much of the rest of their physical health. That was really hard. I could have picked
Sorry
about
to tax you.
10, picked about 10 top tips, but I think weight because it's really neglected by a lot of people. People are very used to seeing fat dogs, so they think that's how dogs should look like. And excess weight can lead to a lot of other physical health issues, like not just joints, but organ related, etc. So keep your dog at a healthy weight.
Fair.
Whatever you eat, whatever supplements you're using.
That's a good point. So if anyone's like inspired by this going, gosh, I need to go and investigate all my dog's food. How do they, obviously, I'm sure there's other people out there as well, but particularly, how do they contact you? How do they work with you? What's the best thing to do to get in touch with you?
So the first thing that I'd recommend doing is heading over to my Instagram at Chewing with River. I post loads of reels with lots of free information and content on there. So have a good scroll, see if you vibe with me, because I'm not for everybody and not everyone is for me either. So see what you think about my delivery, about the information I'm putting out there. And if you think, actually, this sounds like a bit of me, I want to find out more, then you can go on my website, chewingwithriver.com, and you can book a free discovery call. And then we'll jump on the phone, have a chat, and see how I can help.
Wonderful. Well, I'll obviously put those details in the description of the podcast so that if people need them written down, they'll be there as well so they can get in touch with you. It's been fantastic talking to you and hearing more about nutrition and all the things we should start to think about. And so I think we might have to do another episode as well to touch on loads more. Thank you very much. It's been wonderful speaking to you.
Thank you so much for having me, Debbie. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to The Dynamic Dog Owner with me, Debbie Potter. See you next time.